Hey guys, Marshall from Going Gear, SHOT Show 2017. It is the last day, so we're sitting down. And I'm here with Eric Glesser from Spyderco. How's it going, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for coming and seeing us.
Absolutely. So, in previous years, we've gone over pretty much every new knife that you guys have released. And how many new models are there sitting over there on the table?
Ooh, 30 or 40?
So that would make a super long video if we went over everyone in depth, or we could go over all of them and not really get into any details. So we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to go over a sample of them and start getting into some more questions about the manufacturing and the materials and things that I personally find a lot more interesting than just a brief overview of everything. So hopefully you guys like it. If you do, let us know in the comments, and we'll do more of these in the future. You ready to get started?
Can't wait.
Let's do it.
I'll start with going over the Para 3. The Para 3 is one of the more anticipated knives we came out with this year. People are anxiously awaiting it. We're filling demand as we can. So this is the Para 3. You can see the size difference. This is the Paramilitary 2. This is currently in the line, has been for a few years, has gained quite a reputation for pure performance. This year we're launching the Paramilitary 3. It's smaller in its size. We went to a 3-inch, and that's from the handle to the tip. That's typically how legally they measure it. And that's what we were getting. A lot of requests that the Paramilitary was a great knife, but it was just a little too large. And 3 inches is probably a nice EDC for a lot of areas, particularly for laws. And so we got that right to 3 inches. When you start designing a larger knife, you start to get into a smaller package, though you do have to make changes. You can't just take the design and shrink it down. And you can see that here, particularly towards the back. When you have a larger knife, your hand can fill that handle, and so you can expand at the back, and you can have a little bit difference at the back. When you start shrinking that knife down, as you can see, your finger starts to hug that back, and you have to change the design. This one was designed to be able to hold in both positions. It's nice and safe and secure. Feels well in the hand in both an up front forward position or a further back position. We did try to keep all the things you have in the Paramilitary 2. You have the same thicknesses in the scales, same thicknesses in the blade. Though it is a smaller package, we found that those thicknesses work very well for cutting and pure performance in the hand and other things. It's got that nice compression lock, high quality compression lock, very good jimping. We really pay attention to that nice crisp jimping on our knives. It really grabs you back, but not too much. We've gone to a stepped on this one, a step stop pin. Here you can see the screw on the traditional Paramilitary 2. In time, we'll move to a step stop pin in that one too. We do CQI, constant quality improvement, or Kaizen, all the time. And so these are just little steps that we do. We were getting a lot back in customer service and a lot of requests that most people liked it tip up in their carry. And so we're going to try out tip up when we deliver it in the box. We'll see how it goes. For the Paramilitary 2, we'll consider to deliver it tip down. They have a very large lanyard hole. With a Paramilitary or for some of these harder use knives, having a large lanyard to tie some substantial ties to is needed for some customers. Some people like to get a nice tie around their hand or something to add more security. So rather than having a really small lanyard, it's beefed up on the Paramilitary 2. Very open construction, nice and lightweight. You can see the front. The handle, because of the compression lock, feels very good through the fingers. Sometimes when you get into some of these other locks, you have to make openings and clearances for them. It has a 4-way clip, so you can carry it just about any way. If you are left-handed, the hole is easily accessible. But it's one of our more popular, one of our workhorses, and we're excited to bring the Para 3 to the market.
So since you and your dad tend to be humble about this kind of stuff, who's the designer on this one?
Well, we put both tags on there. The reason we do that is the original Paramilitary was designed solely by my father. Then the Paramilitary, the original package, had some real problems, mostly engineering and a few other problems, but mostly engineering. And when we were trying to develop that out, we ended up with a larger package, and that was pretty much me developing the Paramilitary 2. Then we've learned a lot since then, since we developed the Paramilitary 2, and through request, the original Paramilitary was still the size that people wanted, and the original Paramilitary was a 3-inch folder. And so I did develop the Paramilitary 3, but it all started from that first Paramilitary. And so that's why there are both tags.
So these were introduced a little before my time with Spyderco as a dealer. Were these the origin of the compression lock, or where did that start?
I believe it might be the first compression lock. We made another one that was called the Salsa out of Taiwan. That was also one of our early compression locks. We also made a Senafani in a compression lock in the U.S. That was one of the first ones. And so I can't remember off the top of my head which was the very first, but it's in there. The Paramilitary was right in that history.
It was in the beginning. All right. What do you have next?
Okay. Next, I'm going to go into Maximet. This one's the lightweight Manix 2. The reason I'm going into the Maximet real quick is because for this knife, we think it's about as lightweight and powerful as you can get. If you're looking for power to weight ratio like that race car, this is pretty tough to beat. The weight, because there's no stainless liners, we really reduce the metal inside the handle. There's not a lot of lock there. The ball lock, or the lock itself, is a ball, which is very strong but very small and lightweight. And so the weight of this is incredibly light, but you have a lot of blade for the package. It's got a nice wire clip, which also reduces the weight, reduces what's showing out of the pocket, bidirectional texturing. The lock is strong. When we were first beginning to develop this and we put it in our bender busters, and with our bender buster quickly we break the lock, we film the lock, and then we have computers that tells us the distance that it took for the weight it broke at. It has that nice lightweight clip. It's going to hide away in the pocket a lot. It's got that large lanyard. Like the Paramilitary, for this type of knife, we like the larger lanyards. You can tie a substantial cord to it. With the Maximet, it's an interesting story. It's a very hard steel. Gets into those mid to higher 60s. They built this steel for the rolling plants. When you're rolling the billets, you need a very hard steel. And so we were able to take that steel, grind it into the shape of the blade. It can be a bit of a challenge when you're working with a nice thin blade like that goes all the way down to that full flat grind. It's a challenge to be able to shape that. But one of the things that this is nice is it's very strong. It's not that brittle. Oftentimes when you get into a very hard steel like this and you get into these thin blades and tall geometries, it gets pretty brittle. With the Maximet, it's hard and it's not that brittle.
I noticed you have the stonewash finish on there. That seems like kind of a departure for you guys. You like satin. Why the stonewash?
Well, when you get into some of these harder materials, too, getting a nice satin finish can be a real challenge. The aggression of the buffer, the aggression of the initial bevel that you put in there. So when you're buffing, you can sit there and buff, and it's really not removing very much material. And so oftentimes when you get into these much harder steels, a stonewash isn't a bad option.
I love the look of stonewash, so I like to see that in more knives for sure.
So we're going to do Maximet in a whole series of knives out of the U.S. We start with the lightweights, the lightweight Native, the lightweight Manix, because we like that power to weight ratio. We like you to be able to go to the market and get a maximum graded performance steel at an inexpensive price. Most of the time when people start looking at 110Vs, Maximets, these high-grade steels, they tend to put them in carbon fiber and titanium and make it an expensive piece, and many of the consumers don't get the option to even use it. So we like to put that nice high-fluting steel in a more inexpensive, high-performance package for the consumer.
So is that something that we're going to see in sprint runs, or are these going to be production knives?
They're all regular production.
Awesome.
And I believe these are already in the market. These and the Natives should be right behind them, and then more to follow in G10 and other variations.
Cool. What's next?
Next, we're going to do a knife called the Little NUKAKA. It's a gents folder. This is our first flash batch. And as a quick explanation, what a flash batch is something that is an all-new knife, all-new tooling, stamping dies, laser, engineering, whatever it needs to be, but it's made for one quick batch. This one's going to be a 1,200-piece run. It's going to say 1 of 1,200, 2 of 1,200. Each one will be individually engraved. One of the reasons we're doing it is it highlights our ability to develop these kind of knives quickly and get them to the market and move on to the next thing. To be able to build these knives with full engineering and tight tolerances and the kind of quality levels we're going to, and to be able to rapidly do it is a challenge. And these days we've been able to do it, and this highlights that. So this will come with a white G10, which can be very challenging in making white G10. It gets dark. it gets stained and dark easily. Machining it, keeping it clean throughout the processing can be a real challenge. So it's white G10. It's got a nice clean backspacer, all perfectly sanded. The bevel on this is all the way down to the edge, and we put a little micro beveled edge on there, so you can see it's not a very large edge. With many of these bushcraft knives, they want that zero blade grind for splitting wood or that finer cut. The origins of this is a Scandinavian bushcraft knife. Though it's been shrunk down and made into a gents folder, that's where the original origins started. This one doesn't have a lot of guard, but the blade goes all the way back, which is, makes some people nervous, but you have to pay attention to what you're doing. For the Scandinavian bushcrafter, though, they like that. They can climb right up next to the edge and cut right where they need to cut without having anything in the middle. So, the hole is easily accessible. It's got a nice liner lock, a nice deep pocket wire clip. It's not going to pull your pants down if it's in your pocket, particularly if you're wearing a suit. It's a very clean gents folder made for the collector to highlight our abilities for new products. It's our first flash batch.
Who's the designer on that one?
Pekka Tuominen, and he's Scandinavian, makes some very nice custom pieces. He made a larger knife for us called the NUKAKA. It's probably twice as long, and that's a real bushcraft folder. He took the traditional puko, which is fixed blade, and turned it into a folder. If you look at the puko, which almost all of them are fixed blades, you'll see that in this package. And trying to take a puko into a folding package was a real feat of design. And so the original NUKAKA, the little NUKAKA, Pekka Tuominen did a fantastic job of taking that old traditional knife, that fixed blade, and turning it into a folder.
So when you say flash batch, does that mean that this style is never going to be produced again?
Right. This knife's going to come, we'll go through the one batch, and then it's gone.
So no variations, no other colors, no other steels, nothing.
No other sprint runs? Who knows? That's a tough promise to make someday. If they're beating our doors down 5 and 10 years from now, maybe we'll consider a sprint. But right now, that is no plans for that. Right now, it's a flash batch. We're going to come in, go out with it, and go on to the next thing. But with what our capabilities are these days, there's so many new designs. We're working, as you look at our prototype case and many of our things, we're working on so many knives that we could keep doing this and not have to go back to these that often.
Yeah, there's a lot of knives that, unless you come to shows like this, people don't ever see them. So you have a lot of options out there for future flash batches or future production knives at that.
And so we're this is our first flash batch. Will we have more flash batches? I don't know. We're trying it out. We like to experiment.
So I guess if people buy them quickly, then it'll be a success.
That would mark more of a success. Yes.
All right, what's next?
Next is another Chaparral. So we do a Chaparral series. This is like the little NUKAKA. It's a gents folder, and we're trying to make it so it's thin, lightweight. Easy to carry if you're wearing slacks, and that's what mostly the Chaparral series is, our gents folders. But they have a new handle for each one. We started with a carbon fiber, then we went to a couple stepped titaniums. This is a raffia. It's an epoxy-based process where they take a mesh, in this case it's copper and bronze, and they take that mesh and they make it into a rose pattern. They drop it into the epoxy hardens, and then they slice it into layers. And so this is a raffia. If you look at it, you can kind of see it's a smoke. We polished the liners on the inside, and you can see through it. That gives it a little bit of depth. You can see the mesh has depth to it. We felt it was a very beautiful material, and it brought some of that gents flair to the Chaparral. It feels very soft. It's a new feeling that I haven't really felt quite like it in many other handles. The quality of it is fantastic. The lock has got perfect lineup, perfect sanding, no gaps, nice and solid in the open and closed. Very clean H. It's smooth. It's got a good self-close. It's got most of the things you look for in a nice, high-quality gents folder. We're happy with the MSRP too. It's about $200, and for the Chaparral series, this is a nice addition to it.
So on a manufacturing question, when you talk about how smooth it is across the top here, once it's put together, do you guys come back and do a grind or a sand, or is that just all tight tolerances, and then when it's put together, you have that smoothness?
It's different on different models. For this model, yes, we go back afterwards, we do a final sanding, and that can be a challenge because you put the knife together, you sand the spine, and then you close it, and everything's not the same as it was. And so, getting your engineering right to begin with, and then being able to go in and do a secondary process after that and have it be right can be a challenge. To begin with, your tolerances have to be very tight. So that when you are doing a sanding like that, you're not removing a lot. But oftentimes when you start removing material, a gap will form, or there's some real challenges to putting knives together and doing more processing afterwards. And backlocks are a highlight of that. Many of the backlocks are put together and then worked afterwards.
So the reason I asked that question was my next question is, when you do that and you do go back afterwards after it's assembled, do you have to take the knife apart again? I mean, all the metal filings and everything, where does that go? Do you clean it out, and how does that happen?
Well, now you're getting into manufacturing. That's a secret. I'll share some of it. Sometimes you do. Sometimes, if it's skeletonized or something like this, you may have to disassemble it, label every part, clean every part, and reassemble it. But something like that can be difficult because then a gap is formed. And that's why I said it depends on what the model is and what we're trying to achieve. Some of them, no. You get into our Enduras and Delicas, particularly in the lightweights, the backlocks don't need these kind of requirements. And so, but you are right. Yeah, that's an astute observation. Sometimes you do have to go back and clean these things. We deliver clean knives.
Good.
So this has CTS XHP too, which is a fun steel. Most of the things we're doing are S30V. CTS XHP is a nice performing steel. It's almost like a stainless D2. You get above 13% chrome, it becomes a stainless. So the chemistry is almost the same as D2, but with more chrome. D2, for people that have been in the industry a long time, gets sharp and stays sharp a long time. It has a nice thin edge, but it's never been stainless. And so XHP to get into that realm is nice. It's also a powdered metal, so it's very homogeneous. They go completely through the powdering process. So it's a nice CTS XHP blade steel.
All right, what you got next?
Next, how about do a value folder? So this is a new value folder coming from us. We're expanding that market. What we're doing with this one is we're bringing BD1, CTS BD1 or BD1N in time, because we're going to develop towards BD1N as well, to the market in China. It's an American steel in a value folder. It is going to be a little bit more expensive than some of our other value folders because of that American steel. Our other values folders have an 8CR13 MOV, which is made in China. It's one of their better performing steels made out of China. When you look at the chemistry of BD1, it's remarkably close to an 8CR13 MOV. It's a little bit up in its carbon. It's got some trace elements, but it performs very well, and it's made in the U.S. So the BD1's being shipped over into China. We also have a new G10 we're developing with them. The G10 that we use is typically a peel ply, so it has a nice grip. Peel ply G10s, particularly in value folders, can be a real challenge. This is a new strategy towards peel ply, giving it a new look and color and feel. It's kind of a netted mesh that's put on the top and then layered, and so that you can kind of see that gray mesh through it, but it also gives you a nice little slight texture. So this is a gray mesh G10 with a BD1. Nice open back construction, all skeletonized, nice and solid, high quality. This is a maker that we've been working with in China for 15 years. And recently I had a question, who's your most improved factory in China over the last 15 years? Because we like constant quality improvement. And we're very proud with this maker in China. One of the things he's been able to do is the steels. He's able to grind these steels and heat treat them to our specs and make them the performance we want. The solid lockups, the lineup where it needs to be, the jimping, the polish. Of our value folders, this is really a high quality piece in our mind. You pay a little extra for it, but it's worth it. It's called the Polestar. It's an in-house design. Nice guard in the front, nice edge, nice blade to handle ratio, carries well. It really has all the features you look for in a Spyderco.
So in-house design, you or your dad?
This one's my dad, all the way, just his tag.
So you guys are more adventurous than I can think of compared to any of the other manufacturers when it comes to steels. How do you discover these new steels? Are you seeking them out, or do you have the manufacturers approach you with something that they think might be appropriate? Like the one you were talking about that is traditionally used for metal rolling. How did you discover that that could be used for a knife?
Well, they're all different, so they're all different stories. Sometimes we seek them out. Sometimes we work with the foundry and work with the chemistries to help develop what we're looking for. Sometimes we notice it in the marketplace. It's really different across the board, also because we work in all the different countries. In Japan, we work with a lot of Japanese steels. H1 was originally suggested to us by a Japanese person, which has been a very good steel for us the last few years and performs very well. And so if we're in Europe, like with the Italian factories, we tend to use European steels. In Japan, we tend to use Japanese. In China, we tend to use Chinese steels. In America, we tend to use American steels. And because of all the different countries of origins and the manufacturers, the models we're trying to make, there's no straight story to that. There's almost a little bit of everything in there. The Maximet, which you mentioned first, was actually used by another company first, which was Kershaw. They made a little batch out of it. I don't think they made a lot of it. They never went anywhere with it, and we noticed how well it was. We got a piece of it, we tested it, and said, this is cool stuff. And then we went from there. One thing about me and my dad is we love knives. The steel and the edge, the steel is the spirit. The edge is what we're using. The blade is just there to hold the edge. The handle's just there to control the edge, and so the steel is a very important part. It's the soul of the knife. And so because we have a passion for it, because we use them, because we love it, we get into the steels.
So you guys obviously pay attention to the other companies. Do you buy their knives just to see what they're doing?
Do it well? Yeah, I buy other people's knives. I don't just buy them to see what they're doing. No, I typically buy them because I like them.
I didn't mean like industrial espionage. I meant more to just to see what's out there.
I'm a knife fan. I've had people say, "Who are your favorite designers?" Ken Onion, he's one of my favorites. Blackie Collins, they're Frank Senafani, Michael Walker, Bill Moran. I mean, you go back. I'm a fan of knives, and so our competitors work with many of the collaborators and designers that I greatly appreciate, and I'll jump in and buy one of their knives in a heartbeat because I like it.
That's good to hear.
Okay, so that's the Pole Star. The Pole Star is the North Star, and that's where the name came from. We also have a smaller version called the Alcyon, which is another star.
Is that going to have the same the textured finish on there?
It does. It's got the gray check. It's got a little bit smaller package, and that'll come in BD1 too. But that one I don't have here, and it's a little bit further out. But we are developing value folders. It's going to be an important part. When Spyderco first began, the yen was much weaker and all of our stuff was made in Japan. And through the 80s and 90s, it was the working man and the value folder that really appreciated Spyderco. It wasn't until the 90s and past 2000 that people really started collecting them and the materials and things changed. And so at Spyderco, we're not going to forget the working man and the value folder. You need to be able to go and get something at a low cost that's going to perform very well every day and be there when you need it. Particularly for law enforcement, military, firefighters, paramedics, the people that are out there saving our butt.
Excellent. What's next?
So next I'm going to go into a couple collector's pieces. One, I have the production version, and when I came out to the factory or to the show, I grabbed the wrong handle. This one's the custom piece, which shows you how close the production piece is going to be. This one is a Darn Dao Bob Lum. For some people that are junkies of Bob Lum or have done some research, they might have seen one of these. He only made a few of them. They're a very traditional shape in China. Much of the time they come in a larger with a staff. I don't remember the name of the shape of the blade, but it's very traditional in China. And so Bob Lum was able to take that traditional shape like he has in Tontos and many Chinese folders and many other things and bring it to a smaller fixed blade, though it's still large. As you can see, it's very substantial. We're going to make this one in CPM 154. It's going to be a big chopper. It's got this small hilt here that expands all the way out. It's got a nice full tang on there. It's going to come with a leather sheath that drops it in. This, if you're a Bob Lum fan, it's just a big chopper, a big one of his collectible pieces. I've gone out and used this thing. It chops and cuts beautifully. But it's just a nice collector's piece, or a user if you want. But knowing how many people follow Bob Lum, I would imagine half of these are going to end up in a safe and not get used. But we are planning on making a Bob Lum darn Dow. Now, we've had this knife for 20 years anyways, and we've never been able to produce it. Trying to take a blade this thick and grind this blade and trying to do what we're trying to achieve with the edge and everything else, the manufacturing was just too difficult. And so just to this day and age, we're getting to the ability to be able to grind and make this. There's been a few knives like that, like the Brian Ty. We had that knife for 10 years plus. And so some of these knives are coming out of the woodworks because of the modern technologies are getting there.
You know, something I noticed on there is the tang is a full tang, but it's tapered towards the end, the actual thickness. I don't know if I've ever seen that before.
Oh, yeah, tapered tangs. If you're... Most people start with production knife companies, then they gravitate towards custom knife guys, the more you learn. If you get into fixed blades, tapered tangs are a nice symbol of quality. They're a nice balance. I honestly can't remember if we're tapering the tang on this or not. I have to go back and look at it.
That seems like an extra level of complication.
We might be. We've done tapered tangs in the past, and also it's a nice 3D. When you're making something like this, you know, go get him Bob Lum. But he's got that nice tapered tang. He's got a 3D machining. The pins are flush. They're polished like they need to be. This knife is over 20 years old, and it hasn't fallen apart on us. And so, you know, guys like Bob Lum became famous in the custom world not only because of their designs, but their pure ability. I mean, he even piped the lanyard on this thing. And so, you know, Bob Lum is special for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, the handle with the 3D machining on there, was he actually doing CNC machining back then, or is he doing that by hand? Or
I'm almost positive this was all by hand.
That's impressive.
Yes, that's it. Bob Lum is impressive. I guess I'll keep going with another collector's piece. This is an ethnic series designed by Ed Schempp. In Europe, for many years, the old knight used to carry a dagger, a smaller dagger on his side. This is to represent some of that. What we're happy or proud with this one is the blade. The blade was a challenge to make. If you look at this closely, the grind lines are at an angle. One set goes this way, one set goes this way. These fullers are spread out so that the grind line goes into the middle of it and all the way out to the tip. Because of the thicknesses of these, we had to adjust the fullers to give it that nice symmetrical look. If you look inside the fullers, they're even blasted. And so the grind lines go this way, It's got a blasted fuller, and then the grind lines go vertical. And so being able to take an obstinate material like this and give it this very complicated shape all the way down to that crisp edge has been a real challenge. And then when you flip it over, you have that beautiful fuller that goes right through the middle that offsets the other two, so it acts as a rib. Then you have those same grind lines, that vertical grind line, these polish marks. It's symmetrical on the top, it's symmetrical on the bottom. Trying to make this shape of a blade was very difficult, and we did an excellent job achieving it. Then it locks up just like it's supposed to. It's nice and smooth. It has that good self-close. The blade is centered. You know, oftentimes those things will drift off as you're trying to grind them. It's got a nice, clean, polished liners all the way around it. We have fullers that are dropped into the G10. And if you notice, it's all polished. After you machine 3D and you put those fullers in there, you got to go in afterwards and then polish the thing. And the first thing that happens when you polish it is you round out everything and it looks like crap. We didn't do that. You know, it's all machined, it's all polished, everything's symmetrical, everything is crisp on both sides. Very difficult to make. I'm not sure that a lot of people could make this even if they wanted to. And so we're very happy to be able to achieve Ed Schempp's Euro dagger. And he had been working on this for years. One of the things Ed Schempp does is he goes out to Europe and he goes to the museums and he learns about the ethnic piece. And so when this was a nice piece, the ribs was a real lesson. You know, Viking swords used to be really wide and have fullers through them so that they created strength as a rib effect, and that's what this brings to the table.
So I'm guessing you have to do the blasting before the grinding?
How we go about that, I'm not going to go over. Yeah.
We'll let you keep that one a secret.
But yeah, when you're, for example, you blast it, you polish it, how do you keep that line crisp all the way around? Usually your buffer wants to remove some of that blasting. Or how do you keep all these grind lines crisp during the buffing? You know, if you're buffing and you over buff this and then get lighter as you go down, they're not crisp anymore all the way through. And so we're paying attention to all those little details.
Awesome. What's next?
How about a fish hunter? So this is a salt series. Comes with an injection molded sheath, nice and lightweight. The blade is molded into the handle, so you can see you don't see any tang. This blade is not gonna come out. You gotta melt the thing and cut it apart. This is all one solid piece. This is H1, so it's not gonna rust on you. What we like about H1 too is it cuts and cuts and cuts, particularly in serrated edge. Plain edge is more like a 440C and 8% carbon as far as edge retention. Serrated edge, because it's work hard and cuts, one of our best testing out there. The other thing we like about H1 is its toughness. We've had people bend these before that they break them. And so with this, if you look, that's thin all the way through. And it has this grind line that goes right to the tip. But this tip, that's a strong tip. You know, that's sharp and it's tough. The design was for free divers. And so a lot of these guys free dive down, they spear a fish. Oftentimes there's a line on the spear and they're trying to haul in a big fish. And so this knife they can draw quickly and try to kill the fish or brain the fish so that they can get out of trouble. The last thing you want to do when you're holding your breath as a free diver is deal with a crazy fish. And so they typically keep a knife on their side to take care of cutting the line if they need to get loose or killing the fish or doing what they need to do. So the knife was developed for the free diver. The bright yellow is really nice. When you go down 80 feet, 100 feet, the more you go down through the depths, the colors tend to disappear. You know, as a side story, my dad and I did an experiment. We grabbed some color charts because we're divers, and we dove down to 90 feet with our color charts. And the only thing you could see down there were these bright yellows and oranges. And that's why you see a lot of our salts come in these bright yellows and oranges. All the blues and purples and other colors just disappear. And so if you're going down free diving, you'll have a little bit of a bright yellow there. It's got a nice bidirectional texturing, not going to slip out of the hand. It fills the hand. It feels good in the hand. And then it's got a nice secure, not going to slip out, because when you're diving down and diving back up, you don't want that thing falling out. It's got holes. A lot of people tend to zip tie them or find other ways to attach them with cord. Because when you're free diving or diving, there's a lot of technique on how you draw and where you carry. So it does give you flexibility on that. But this is the fish hunter. It's the new salt piece.
You guys are very dedicated to your craft. I don't think I've heard of any other stories of people diving down with color charts or anything even close to that level just to figure out the best color.
Yeah, we like what we do. We do. Diving's one of our hobbies. You know, sailing's one of our hobbies. For those who don't know, we make sailboats too. Sage Marine, nice 15-foot monohull, nice 17-foot monohull. Check them out. But yeah, we do other things too.
What else you got?
How about I add another salt series? So with most of our salt series, they're H1. H1 doesn't perform in plain edge like it does serrated edge. So we wanted to find another steel that's going to do well for us, and that's where LC200N came in. It's another nitrogen-based steel, but this is a martensitic steel we can heat treat. So in plain edge, this is going to stay sharp a long time, but we get into our salt series. So we're going towards a longer sharpened plain edge, something that's a little harder use, has G10, has a nested compression lock. The compression lock's one of our strongest locks, nice and solid lockup. So this is the Caribbean. We're going to make it in sheep's foot. We're going to make it in leaf plain. We're going to make it in plain. We're going to make it in serrated. It's got the yellow and black, like for the depths and the colors. We like those yellows. It's got that bi-directional texturing. It's got a nice stamped titanium clip with a substantial screw mount. skeletonized liners to reduce the weight, open back. You can wash the thing out and get it clean. But this is the new Caribbean series as part of our salt series.
Awesome. Don't you have a? Can you show the other one that you have in the box over there?
Oh, I do have one. So there's a serrated sheep's foot. On this sheep's foot too, you can see it's got a little bit more belly and plain edge than a lot of our sheep's foot. A lot of our rescues go with the serration all the way out to the tip, and they're straighter in their plunge. With a rescue knife, getting that tip in to uncut a seatbelt or do what you need to do is important. So oftentimes we don't have that little plain edge. On a salt series or a harder use rust-free knife, you do have that little bit of plain edge and a little bit of belly for more versatile cuts. And then as an add to that, we have a little sheep's foot salt coming in a man bug handle out of H1, and that's a little roaring cutting power there.
That's one of my favorites of the new ones.
Yeah, we found that serrated H1 outcuts anything we've ever tested. The Jumpmaster is our #1. So when you test all the serrated edges, some are better than others because it's a work hardening steel. Well, this little knife will cut about as long as anything we've ever tested, and it's in a tiny little package. You know, if you're going to put something in your dive suit, if you're going to go out and cut bale hays or do what you need to do, and you need a lot of cutting power in a small package, that's about as tough as you can get, and it's never going to rust on you. You can leave it in the pocket and never worry about it, and it's going to be there when you need it. It's got that nice solid back lock. It's not going to fold on you. You can go to town with that little knife, but that'll be coming out soon too.
So I've heard the stories that these will not even rust in salt water. If you left this thing in salt water for 10 years, is it not going to rust?
If it went down with the Titanic, you might have to chip it out of some coral, but it will still be there.
That's cool.
Yeah, it will not rust.
Is that including all the hardware?
Yes, we make all the hardware, even to the titanium clips. These are meant to be rust-free. Now, we've gotten some back from customers that tends to get something on it. For example, if you're in a water that has chemicals in it or something, sometimes you can get a chemical that will leach itself into the G10 or the plastic, and then that can start to corrode. Of some of the pieces, we've seen the environments that other things have been a challenge, but as far as pure rust, nothing on this knife is creating the rust.
Awesome. What's next?
I could do
That big fixed blade?
This is the, what are we calling this? The Sustain. He calls his custom pieces something else. That's why I couldn't remember it. This is Stuart Ackerman. He's in New Zealand. What we like about this is that nice grind line that goes all the way out. It's got a nice taper up here that goes down to fairly thin. It comes in 20 CV, made in Taiwan. Has a nice 3D G10 handle. Not going to slip up. Not going to fall back on it. Nice big lanyard. It's going to be able to be choked up on. This is something that will reach out and do a nice cut for you. It comes with a leather sheath. As he draws these, he tends to put his pinky in here and draw it. That was the intention of it, and when you're carrying them. But it comes with this nice leather sheath. It's not going to scratch up the knife any. It's going to protect the edge and other things. But it's just a nice fixed blade to do just about any chore you need.
What's the steel on that one?
20 CV. I am right? Yep, 20 CV. Got to double check sometimes. It all mushes together.
I understand. Can you show us that orange one that's sitting in the box over there? I like that one. I like orange. Up against the...
Oh, yeah. Okay, the Meerkat. For people that have been around Spyderco a long time, we made the first Meerkat, I believe, in the late 90s. I believe it was the first wire clip on a knife. I know the Q came out about the same time. The Q, the Meerkat, they were the first wire clips on knives. We've been making Meerkats maybe every five or 10 years. We do a small sprint run. This is going to be a sprint run. For the people that have known Spyderco a long time, they know the Meerkat. It's a nice collectible piece. It's easy to use, easy to carry. It's a fun carry. One of the things that people like about it is that it has a modified, we call it a magic lock, but it's a back lock that has a pin that's hooked to the scale that rotates up. And so you push down on the back, which rotates the lock to unclose it. I was watching Peter carry earlier. He was just pushing it this way to unlock it. And so the lock itself brings some novelty to it. Until you're shown how to unlock it, most people cannot figure it out at first. They just don't grasp the sliding of it.
It had to be explained to me.
Has to be explained to most, but once you get it, it's very clever. Fits the hand great. These little contours in there fit for your fingers just right. The deep pocket wire clip tucks the knife away so it hides. It's legal just about anywhere. It's easy to get to, easy to unlock. It's just a nice performance-based EDC by Spyderco.
And it looks like that's a laminated steel. Is that a laminated steel in there?
Yes, it is. Thanks for reminding me of these things. Laminated HAP 40. And so because it's HAP 40 is a tool steel, gets very hard. A lot of laminates are used because they give you easier grinding, easy stampability. One of the nice things about the laminate too is because the HAP 40 there is a non-stainless and there's a stainless clad to it, there'll be a slight patina that goes along the edge where you'll still have a shine to the stainless part because it's not a stainless. And then it's part of a HAP 40 series where we had this kind of a burnt orange. So we've done an Endura, a Delica, a Man Bug, and this is just another addition to a HAP 40 series.
Very cool. Anything else you want to show us today?
Well, I think that's a pretty good load of knives.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for your time, Eric.
I appreciate it. Thanks for coming and seeing me, and I hope you like the new knives.